Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty hit their highest level in 13 months as stock markets across the world rise after positive U.S. inflation data overnight. The Nifty Bank hits another record high. It's the biggest rally in the Indian rupee over the last 4 years. Gains over 100 paise against the dollar, hitting its highest level in nearly 2 months. On her first visit to India as the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen meets Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, visits the Microsoft campus in Noida, sends a message to China, calls for efforts to make supply chains resilient through friendshoring. Reliance, Adani, Capri Global, OP Jindal Group are among the 15 suitors for future retail. Sources say banks will hold a committee of creditors meeting over the next few days to discuss the bids. The Supreme Court asked the government to reconsider an additional 10% levy imposed on Vedanta's percentage of revenue from Rajasthan's Barmer oil fields. Vedanta proposes to double output if the government withdraws the levy. Government defends the levy, and the apex court calls for a decision to be taken in 6 weeks. The Supreme Court fumes at the centre, says keeping collegium recommendations on hold is unacceptable, issues a notice to the Union Law Secretary seeking reasons for the delay. The Supreme Court observes the centre is neither approving names nor communicating reasons for withholding approval. Top executives continue to walk out of Twitter, and Elon Musk hints at a potential bankruptcy as his ownership of the company enters the 3rd week. Fake Twitter accounts flock to get a blue check mark, creating chaos for several companies, brands and individuals. SoftBank swings to profit for the first time in 3 quarters after selling significant stake in its crown jewel Alibaba for $37 billion. But the Vision Fund, which invests heavily in tech stocks, has lost nearly $10 billion last quarter. China eases its stringent COVID restrictions despite a surge in cases, reduces the quarantine time for international travelers by 2 days, ends the penalty for airlines for bringing in positive cases. Well, let's start with the day's market action. Inflation is easing in the U.S. and that has sparked a rally across global stock markets. The Wall Street hitting the highest level in 13 months. The Sensex gained over 1,100 points. The Nifty rallied over 300 points. Bank stocks leading the charge again today, with the Nifty Bank Index ending at a record high. Mid-caps, though, underperformed, with the index ending barely in the green. Prashant is standing by with the market wrap. Overnight inflation cheer impacting global markets and ours as well, Prashant.
Big outsized moves overnight, and the market here responded. The Nifty started with a big gap. It accumulated gains through the course of the day and actually ended at the high point. The Bank Nifty, not so much. It ended higher, but in the middle of the high and the low point today. Broader markets at the margin did not participate as much. They were flat to slightly higher. HDFC and HDFC Bank, by the way, were responsible for 50% of the Nifty gain. So that is outsized contribution. And then you had technology, both large cap and broader tech names, which did very well. Even new age companies, recently listed digital companies did very well. Yields, remember, in the US have crashed. And they're a big driver for some of these companies which don't make a profit now, but perhaps will in the future. So the likes of Zomato, PB Fintech, etc. did well. In the broader market, more gainers than losers. So Cochin Shipyard, All Cargo, Newland, Godfrey. Some of these, of course, are continuing gains from earlier in the week. Autos were under pressure. So you had Eicher, Hero and Mahindra, which lost quite a bit. Broader market pressure coming through, again, largely earnings related. So Indian Hotels, GNFC, Campus lost sharply from recent highs. Container Corporation, Chambal, Fluorochem, a few others as well. All in all, I mean, nothing really to complain. I think follow-through in global markets will be important because we've had very large moves and you want to see a continuation, maybe not the same kind of gains, but in the same direction if gains continue. Newer highs here in India are not very far away. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks for joining us. On to the currency market action, where the Indian rupee posted its biggest intraday gain against the dollar in 4 years. $1 now costs nearly 81 rupees. Other Asian currencies also rallying against the dollar. Lata standing by with more on the money market action. Lata, 80.79, that's the dollar rupee today.
Big rally is seen in the rupee. It is at now 7-week highs. And this is in concert with all Asian currencies, largely because, of course, of the dollar fall. Now, the added advantage for India is that because of the return of risk appetite, one sees more dollar inflows as well from the FPIs. But it's possible that in this leg, the Indian rupee may underperform the Asian currencies like the Korean won. One, because those underperformed all this while, and therefore there is more reason for them to rally. Also, they are more dovetailed to the rise in the U.S. economy. And that's why the rupee is also seen as a safe harbor. And therefore, at a time when all currencies are rallying, we may rally a little less. The chances in the immediate run are that exporters will panic because your 83 is nowhere around the corner and they may come in and sell. So a bit of overshoot all the way towards 80 is expected. Where the Reserve Bank comes in is what the market would be most interested. The last time the Reserve Bank bought was at 78.50. So we will have to see when they draw the line in the sand. After all, they will also want to refurbish their reserves. A quick word on bonds as well. 10 basis point fall, and why not? The bond yields in the US have fallen by almost 35 basis points, and therefore a sentimental fall in Indian yields is also expected. So now the bond prices are also at 7-week highs. But here again, there are auctions, and there are auctions coming. Fertilizer deficits are high. So perhaps the rally will be limited, but a rally nevertheless.
All right, Lata, many thanks. And even as the stock markets rally, all major cryptocurrencies continue to trade in the red as investors remain cautious. On a weekly basis, the Bitcoin is down by nearly 18%. Ethereum is down by over 21%. Binance, Ripple, Cardano are some of the other cryptocurrencies that have declined by more than 10% this week. So the chaos in the crypto market continues. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrived in India to participate in the India-U.S. Economic and Financial Partnership Dialogue. This comes just few days ahead of India taking up the presidency of the G20 summit. After visiting Microsoft's facility in Noida, the Treasury Secretary met with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, after which the two held discussions on the India-US ties. Yellen said the Indo-US partnership strengthened while the world was reeling under COVID-19. She added that countries around the world have been overly dependent on risky countries as a single source for critical inputs. She said the U.S. is proactively deepening economic integration with trusted trading partners like India. Finance Minister Sitharaman said the India-U.S. partnership will facilitate a policy stance to address the ongoing global economic challenges.
The world economy was still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic when Russia launched its brutal, unjustified invasion of Ukraine. This generated an unwelcome shock to fuel and food prices and greatly exacerbated inflation pressures. But challenges like this help strengthen partnerships like the one that exists between the U.S. and India.
Our meeting today will lend greater vigor to our economic relationship, strengthen business-to-business links, and facilitate coordinated policy stance to address the pressing global economic challenges. The 9th meeting of the EEFP is also being held against the backdrop of India preparing to assume the G20 presidency.
India's membership in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and efforts to make our supply chains more resilient through what I call friendshoring are tightening those ties. Indeed, our collaboration in this forum can not only promote each of our economies' growth and stability, but can also be instrumental to supporting economic prosperity across the Indo-Pacific region.
At a time when the United States is focused on countering the economic consequences of the Ukraine-Russia war and China's dominance over supply chains, the country's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made an important visit to India. Yellen started her day with a 90-minute visit to Microsoft's India headquarters, interacting with industry leaders and software engineers. In her remarks to the press, she lashed out at President Putin and said that stopping the war would be the best thing for the global economy.
Take Russian energy exports. Russia has long presented itself as a reliable energy partner. But for the better part of this year, Putin has weaponized Russia's natural gas supply against the people of Europe. It's an example of how malicious actors can use their market positions to try to gain geopolitical leverage.
The Treasury Secretary referred to friendshoring 6 times in her 20-minute speech, outlining the U.S. strategy to secure supply chains and diversifying them beyond China.
Or disrupt trade for their own gain. The United States is pursuing an approach called friendshoring to diversify away from countries that present geopolitical and security risks to our supply chain. To do so, we're proactively deepening economic integration with trusted trading partners like India. Our strategy will also create redundancies in our supply chain to mitigate over-concentration risks.
Referring to democratic values more than 10 times in her speech, Yellen said that democracies are at an inflection point.
We're living at a critical time for the cause of freedom around the world. Democracies require our constant attention and nurturing. It's important for all democracies to renew our commitment to civil liberties and human rights, including for all our minorities at home and abroad.
Yellen highlighted that US will work closely with India in the G20 for meaningful debt relief, addressing the climate crisis, making cross-border payments cheaper, and reducing frictions to the flow of data. Secretary Yellen said that India-US ties are strong and will only deepen over time. Her message was very clear that US would like to vigorously pursue economic integration with India, and India is a critical partner for implementing the US vision on secure and reliable supply chains. With video journalist Rajinder from the Microsoft headquarters in Noida, this is Parikshit Luthra.
Well, earnings. Auto manufacturer Mahindra & Mahindra reporting a 57% year-on-year jump in revenue for Q2. The automaker's profits rose by over 38%. EBITDA grew by 50%. The margin number saw a 50 basis point decline, coming in at 12% versus 12.5% last year. Domestic auto sales continue to grow year-on-year. According to the SIAM data, total sales rose 6% to over 19 lakh units. Three-wheelers saw a 70% jump, while passenger vehicles grew by nearly 29%. Inflation impact in rural markets has dented two-wheeler sales, which saw sluggish growth of just 1.6%. A GDP downgrade for India as global uncertainty continues to linger. Global ratings firm Moody's has slashed India's 2022 GDP forecast to 7% from the earlier estimate of 7.7%. The revision is attributed to inflation, high interest rates and slowing global growth. This is the second time that the agency has cut India's growth estimate this year. The Supreme Court has asked the centre to reconsider the additional 10% levy that it imposed on Vedanta's revenue percentage from its Barmer oil fields. The company had proposed doubling its production at Barmer if the centre withdrew its decision. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with more. Ashmit, the centre opposing any reduction of levy. Take us through where things currently stand.
Well, Vedanta is very clear with its argument. They believe that as per the production sharing contract, it now stands extended till 2030, and that unilaterally no amendment can be made to the production sharing contract, much less for increasing the amount payable by Vedanta to the government. The government stand, however, has been that there has been a new policy, the new exploration policy of the NEP. The NEP very clearly prescribes this increased 10% load on the company, and that this is applicable across all the companies, not just specifically on Vedanta. And further, the government argues that this is merely a 10% increase after 25 years of operation of the Barmer airfield, and therefore the government is calling it reasonable. However, the Apex Court has taken note of the argument that Vedanta put forth, that this 10% additional load cast on them can in fact be used to be deployed back into the Barmer oil field, which will cause for a doubling of the production, which in turn will cause for better revenues for the government and even a higher forex. This is an argument that struck a chord with the Apex Court, and the Supreme Court has now directed the centre to go back to have a rethink on this position on this additional levy and to get back. So to doing that, the Ministry of Petroleum now has 6 weeks' time to consider this proposal coming in for Vedanta on the directions of the Apex Court, and they have to give their response by January of 2023. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Ashmit, for joining us. Time for us to head into a break, but when we return, SoftBank swings to profit for the first time in 3 quarters after selling significant stake in its crown jewel, Alibaba, for $37 billion. That and more when we return.